My alien girl roommate was on top of me, and then she did the unthinkable whole situation started 3 months ago. When Jake Murphy decided that living alone in his cramped apartment was getting too expensive and he needed a roommate to split, the rent with him in downtown Seattle, where the cost of living kept climbing higher every month, posted an advertisement online looking for someone clean and responsible who could pay their half on time and maybe not party too loudly on weeknights. Because he had an early morning job at the tech company where he worked as a software developer, what he did not expect was that his new roommate would turn out to be an alien from another world. Entirely her name was Zara, and she looked almost completely human, except for the subtle things that most people would not notice right away, like how her eyes had tiny flecks of silver that seemed to shimmer when the light hit them at certain angles, or how her skin had this faint luminescent quality in the dark that reminded him of those glow-in-the-dark stars kids put on their bedroom. Ceilings told him she was from a planet called Viridian, somewhere in a galaxy that humans had not even discovered yet, and that she was here on Earth as part of a cultural exchange program that her people had secretly established with certain governments around the world. Jake did not believe her at first because it sounded like something out of a science fiction movie, but then she showed him things that made it impossible to deny, like how she could make small objects float in the air just by concentrating on them, or how she could understand and speak any language perfectly after hearing just a few sentences. Living with Zara turned out to be surprisingly normal most of the time because she adapted quickly to human customs and routines, and she was actually a pretty considerate roommate. Always did her dishes and never left her stuff lying around the common areas. Had this curious nature about everything human and would ask Jake endless questions about why people did certain things or what certain phrases meant, and he found himself enjoying these conversations more than he expected because explaining ordinary things to someone who saw them with fresh eyes made him appreciate them in new way. Shara worked remotely doing some kind of research for her people back home, and Jake never fully understood what exactly she was studying, but it seemed to involve observing human behavior and cultural patterns and sending reports back to Viridian through some kind of advanced communication device that looked like a smooth black stone. Two of them fell into an easy friendship over those first couple months, and Jake found himself looking forward to coming home each day because Zara would usually have discovered something new about Earth that fascinated her, and she would want to share it with him enthusiastically. Loved human music especially, and would spend hours listening to different genres, trying to understand what made each one unique and why certain songs made people feel certain emotions. Jake started noticing other things about Zara too, like how graceful she moved even when she was just walking from the kitchen to the couch, or how her laugh sounded like wind chimes, and how she had this way of tilting her head when she was thinking that he found incredibly endearing. Tried not to think about these observations too much because she was his roommate, and also literally from another planet, so any kind of romantic feelings seemed complicated and probably impossible. But then one night everything changed in a way that Jake could never have predicted or prepared himself for it. Started when Zara came home looking distressed, which was unusual because she was normally very composed and calm about everything. Jake was sitting on the couch watching a documentary about deep-sea creatures when she walked in, and he could immediately tell something was wrong because her silver eye flecks were flickering rapidly, which he had learned meant she was experiencing strong emotions. Asked her what happened, and she sat down next to him with her hands clasped tightly together and explained that she had received troubling news from her superiors back on Viridian. There was some kind of political situation developing on her home planet, and the cultural exchange program was being threatened, and there was a real possibility that she might be recalled back home much sooner than planned, possibly within the next few weeks. Jake felt his stomach drop at this news because he had gotten so used to having Zara around, and the apartment would feel incredibly empty without her presence filling it. But what concerned him more was how upset she looked, because in the 3 months they had lived together, he had never seen her. This Shakanch told him that she did not want to leave Earth yet, because she felt like she was just beginning to understand humans, and there was still so much she wanted to learn and experience. Ethan. She said something that surprised him even more, which was that she did not want to leave him specifically because he had become the Most important person in her life on this planet, Jake did not know what to say to that because he felt the same way about her, but had never allowed himself to fully acknowledge. Ithi sat there in awkward silence for a moment, until Zara suddenly stood up and said she needed to show him something important, something she had been keeping secret because she was not sure how he would react. She told him that her people had certain abilities beyond the telekinesis he had already witnessed, and one of these abilities involved something called empathic bonding, which was a way for Viridians to connect deeply with another being on an emotional and mental level. She explained that when Viridians formed these bonds, they could sense what the other person was feeling and share experiences in a way that went beyond normal communication. She admitted that she had been feeling a pull toward forming this kind of bond with Jake for weeks now, but had been resisting it because she knew it would make leaving even harder if she had to go back to Viridian. Jake asked what would happen if they formed this bond, and Zara explained that it would create a connection between them that could span any distance, even across galaxies, and that, once formed, the bond would last their entire Lavesh. Also mentioned that the process of forming the bond required physical closeness and a mutual opening of their consciousnesses to each other, which sounded both terrifying and incredible too. Jake found himself saying yes before he had fully thought through all the implications, because the idea of maintaining some connection with Zara, even she had to leave, felt better than losing her completely. Ara looked relieved, but also nervous, as she explained that they should probably do this now while they still had time and before she potentially got recalled. Asked him to lie down on the couch and relax, and he did as instructed, feeling his heart pounding in his chest because he had no idea what to expect. Zara positioned herself carefully, and then she was on top of him, not in a romantic way, but in a way that allowed her to place her hands on either side of his head and look directly into his azure silver flecked eyes. Seemed to glow brighter as she told him to breathe slowly and try to clear his mind of all thoughts, which was incredibly difficult when he was acutely aware of her presence. Above him, she began speaking in her native language, which sounded like musical notes and water flowing over rocks, and Jake felt strange warmth spreading through his body, starting from where her hands touched his temples. Sensation intensified, and suddenly he could feel emotions that were not his own flooding through his consciousness, and he realized he was feeling what Zara felt. There was anxiety about the situation with her planet and sadness about potentially leaving, and underneath all of that was something else, something warm and tender and overwhelming that he recognized as how she felt about Jimin. That moment, Jake understood that Zara had developed feelings for him that went far beyond friendship, and as soon as he recognized this, he felt his own carefully suppressed emotions rising to the surface. Bond formed between them like a bridge suddenly connecting to separate islands, and Jake gasped because he could sense Zara in his mind, not in an invasive way, but like a comforting presence that belonged to Terra. Zara smiled down at him with tears in her eyes, and then she did the unthinkable thing that changed everything between them forever. Instead of pulling away now that the bond was complete, she leaned down slowly, giving him time to object or pull away, and pressed her lips gently against his in a kiss that felt like coming home. Jake responded, without thinking, wrapping his arms around her and kissing her back as 3 months of denied attraction and growing affection poured out between them. They finally pulled apart, both breathing heavily. Zara laughed softly and said that was not exactly part of the traditional bonding process, but she had been wanting to do that for a very long time. Jake admitted he had wanted the same thing, but had convinced himself it was impossible because of who and what she. Vishara pointed out that the bond proved it was not impossible at all, and that her people had formed successful partnerships with beings from other worlds before, though it was. Rethi spent the rest of that night talking about what this meant for them and what would happen if she really did get recalled to Veridinth. Bond helped them communicate on a deeper level, and Jake could sense that Zara was determined to find a way to stay on Earth, or at least to return as quickly as possible if she was forced to leave over the next few days. They grew even closer as they explored their new,